Welcome back to Event Tech Live, USA and Canada 2021, and to our next session on the main stage, Walk in Your Attendees' Shoes, a look at their hybrid experiences. And I'm delighted to welcome back to Event Tech Live, Stephanie Selesnick, who's joining us on the line now. Stephanie, hello to you and welcome back to Event Tech Live.
I'm thrilled to be here. Absolutely thrilled. I love this event. And it's so much better. I'm not on at 2 a.m. It's wonderful.
Yeah, we moved our time to suit you guys this year. Much better. Much better.
It's really
Stephanie, I'm going to hand over to you. I know that you've got a guest joining you. I'll leave that for you to introduce them, and we'll see you back a little bit later on for some questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the kind intro. Everyone, please welcome Paul Trainer from Informa to the stage. Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Great. How are you doing, Stephanie?
Doing well. Doing well. I'm in Las Vegas where the World of Concrete opened up, our first show in forever. For those of you who haven't paid any attention to anything in the news, and it's an exciting day for the city. It feels really good to have the energy back and be doing those things again. So it kind of plays in really well with what we're going to be talking about today, which is walking in our shoes. What does it look like from the hybrid experience, and what should we be including? So with that, Paul, let me ask you a question. How do you define hybrid?
Me personally, it is carrying on an in-person event, whether it's a trade show or a conference, into a digital atmosphere to bring in people that may not be able to attend, whether it's resources or just challenges of being able to take time away from the office. So it is that digital event coming to life, trying to bring as many of the experiences that we would have in person.
And I look at it a little differently. I look at hybrid as you've got digital helping to drive to the online, to the in-person, and then back to the online in terms of community building and engagement. So I don't think you necessarily have to have both events happening simultaneously. And in fact, it can be quite taxing on all of the resources that you're giving, in terms of your own personal staff. As a matter of fact, does it have to be at the same time? Maybe. But in terms of, using social media to create FOMO and engagement, I think that's a better use of hybrid. I mean, after all, hybrid just means you're combining a couple of things, two or more things together to make something new. So what's going on? So you're with Informa, and Paul has a live show next week here in Las Vegas with TICE, which is the International Surfaces Expo at Mandalay Bay. And you work on the education. So why don't you give us a little bit about what's happening with Informa right now, and then what are you doing with the educational component for TICE? Because I think that's pretty interesting and very topical for this subject.
All eyes are on right now World of Concrete in Las Vegas. So our sister show is just open today. It has been all over international, national news. And it's the first steps of Informa bringing events back to life in North America. We had the Magic Show that went off earlier in Orlando. But this is the first one kind of out of the gate, bringing Las Vegas back to life. And the International Surface event, TICE, is going to be doing that next week. And we are, with TICE, are going specifically into having a hybrid experience. Even though a lot of the effort's going in person, we recognize that many attendees may not be able to travel, whether it is corporate imposed or just their inability to be able to travel or budgets. So we are producing our education conference to be, sometimes we call it an asynchronous event. What we've done is, because live streaming is fairly expensive and it's usually out of the budget to be able to do it in an entire day, we had all of our sessions that are going on the main stage and have these sessions recorded and be able to play those via Facebook Live on the TICE account. So attendees can register for the in-person event and attend everything on the main stage in the audience, or can purchase a virtual pass and they can attend via pre-recorded sessions.
So I want to dig into this a little bit deeper into that. So you're going to have the main stage, is it on the show floor or is it in a ballroom? And are
No,
you just playing? Are you back the pre-recorded questions, or are the presenters actually presenting live on site?
this is the best part of why we're going with Facebook Live instead of the use. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces in the puzzle, and we did it. We did TICE Live virtual back in January. We were a sector global, which was a fantastic kind of wading into the waters. But this time we decided to go and record the sessions that we're going to be presenting. So speaker starts at 12 p.m. on the main stage, which is on the show floor, which is a little different than what we normally do. Usually we're in breakout sessions. When the TICE Live main stage starts, we start the feed on the Facebook Live feed, and they will run approximately, hopefully congruous. The beautiful thing about being able to take it to Facebook Live is, one, the interaction amongst the attendees can happen because you can comment, you can send out those little hearts, the thumbs up, you can get angry if someone says something that's made you mad. So we can really kind of look into the engagement and see how are people reacting, and try to get a better understanding of, well, someone said something at this particular time, it hit a nerve, whether it's good or bad. So we can gauge the engagement and pull in that digital breadcrumbs, for lack of a better term. But at the end of it, the attendees in Facebook Live can send questions, and they could do it throughout the entire time. It would be wonderful if we could bring them live and have those questions brought. But there again, we're back into the world of web streaming, and it's not so easy. So what they can do is ask questions. Myself or one of the other team members will be monitoring it. We can take the question live to the speakers or panelists, get the questions, and feed it back through. Alternatively, if that is not working, then we can also take the questions and put them back into Facebook Live or onto our Facebook pages for enhanced reading later as well.
Yeah, and which is a really great, elegant solution to an inelegant problem, which cost of streaming live from a convention center. There are profit centers. In Asia, all of them Wi-Fi for everybody there for free. They consider it as natural. You have to provide a bathroom. You have to provide rooms. You got to provide Wi-Fi with enough bandwidth to be able to handle a crowd. And unfortunately, here in the U.S., we don't see that happening yet. Hopefully, we will one day. You know, we understand, especially with Wi-Fi. Hopefully, they'll be able to get it up to speed faster and not be charging $1,000 or more for a link. Okay, so, and I love using Facebook. I really do. I think that's a really great way, and it's a great tip for everybody out there, so that if you can't afford the cost of streaming, which could be tens of thousands of dollars, it's a more simplified way, but you can really get the communication going back and forth. And if the timing's a little off, so be it. But at least it's all happening about the same time. So I think that we have to talk about resource allocation. And it's the resource allocation of the people putting on our events. And when you hold something simultaneously, you really are holding two different events at the same time as a hybrid. So you've got the people, you want to engage the people that are there because they're super important. But on the other hand, you also want to engage the people online, right? Something else that we talked about was, what can you do with the stuff that you've, all of the sessions that you've pre-recorded? Do you want to make it a passive revenue stream? Do you want to put it behind a gate? So that those people, perhaps attendees, missed the session that were there and they can get in. But if people heard there was a great session, it can be another profit revenue stream. Or do you guys do that, or do you normally just let anyone listen to stuff after?
No, we don't usually. We haven't in the past made it for profit. If someone's purchased the passes, and typically this would be in the Converge program, which would be off the show floor in the breakout rooms. We can't just throw it out there and let everyone have it, because it kind of diminishes the value that we have given it, even though it's past tense. And if it goes too long, it's probably really not very relevant. So We do take our sessions and make them on demand. TICE Live Virtual, all the sessions went on demand for an additional 30 days. We'll do the same thing here. What I'm really excited about and what I really kind of want to see is specific to the in-person audience. They're going to see the speakers live. It'll be interesting to see if the in-person speakers go back and watch the pre-recorded, because there might be pieces in that session which may not have come up in the in-person. It's likely, but there might be segments and missed moments that we might actually be able to capture additional views from an in-person audience.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So let's talk about trade shows and hybrid briefly. We know that according to UFI and Explori and the work that they've done, you know, the NPS rate, you know, I mean, it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific, with most exhibitors giving it, you know, 25% thumbs up. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. Ultimately, trade shows and expos are marketplaces, right? We connect buyers and sellers. Since they don't work, can you think of any other ideas that some of our, you know, the folks watching this, our viewers right now, can take away in terms of things that you've seen done or are doing? I know I have a couple of ideas as well. I'll let you go first.
Specific
so like
to
your
the
TICE
trade
TV,
show
for
floor.
example, right?
Yes. So
you know, just to try
yes.
to engage the buyers and sellers. So maybe talk a little bit about TICE TV, because I think this is another really great idea that you guys are doing.
Yeah, this is a really fun initiative that launched this year and is really gaining traction, and has even begun fairly easy to sell amongst our salespeople. So we launched TICE TV. The inception and the idea kind of came from home shopping. And while we can't necessarily give that entire studio feel, what we've done is started with the exhibitor base and our vendors. They have the capability of recording usually about 15-20 minute product sessions featuring their new products, services, technologies. Really nice right now because there hasn't been trade shows, so it's hard to get that information out there. So we launched TICE TV. We record their sessions. We work with them to get it polished and really edited. And then we push it out on our Facebook feed, again, back on Facebook Live, but at the same time, it's also feeding into our YouTube account, and I think it might also be going into Vimeo. So there's multiple ways of being able to watch it. It has a set broadcast, so there's a set date and time, so you can make the appointment to actually go in and watch it. Then afterwards, it goes into the on-demand, and that's when the views and the number of watchers really increases, especially over 3 days, all the way up to a week and a month. They just keep compounding as we keep going out there and pushing it. So it's been a really interesting new vehicle that we're using, and also has some legs to possibly even become a little bit more home shopping style, where we might be able to have maybe some small studio, try to even sell right there units of floor covering to the retailers and distributors.
That would be great, and it would be a great thing to be able to track with data, right? Because it all comes down to data with digital. What kind of data are you collecting, and then how are you using it? So my example is NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters. They know a thing or two about content, since their show is basically all about content generation, content creation, generation, as well as dissemination. So it's got all of those three things. And they started something during the pandemic called the NAB Amplify series. So they had combinations. It was a newsletter that would go out, and then they would have really good content that was provided, some paid content that was also really good. So here's a tip, everybody. If you're going to get paid content, make sure it's not an infomercial. Make sure it actually has value and it's thought leadership and solving a problem. One good way you can do that is get with whoever your supplier is, do a case study with people using it and how it solved a particular problem. And you may be able to drill it down and keep it under 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour, so that's one of the other beautiful things. But what they did with the NAB Amplify is they had a lot of different areas, and you kind of pick what you want to see, and it's a combination of video and, it's a newsletter, but a little bit more than that in terms of connectivity and having their own proprietary website. So this is another way that you can actually engage, and I think the point of hybrid really should be bringing people to your live event, and for those that can't make it, giving them a completely separate journey, which we're going to get into in a few minutes. We've been hearing a lot about the future of hybrid, and we've been hearing about VR, AR, and XR. So immersive experience, it should engage all 5 senses: taste, sight, smell, touch, and sound. We don't usually get all 5. You can usually get 3 to 4 of them. You wear the headset, et cetera, et cetera. It's expensive until technology comes down, but it does immerse you absolutely. AR, augmented reality, which is live direct. Pokemon Go was a really that find where you are, as long as you don't walk into cars or walk into poles while you're trying to chase it around. Some other stuff I saw was at a SEMA show years ago when it was still brand new, and you would put on the headset and it allowed you to go pretend that you're getting into a brand new vehicle, a prototype of a car, which was pretty neat because you could get in and you could check out the steering wheels, you could check out the dashboard, and so that was pretty amazing. And then of course the last, which is what we're going to be hearing a lot about, I think, is extended reality, which is sort of everything combined in different parts. So it includes all of the descriptive it includes AR, VR, mixed reality, and so it's kind of the umbrella overlooking everything. And it provides a wide variety and a lot of different numbers of levels of how virtual things are. Part of the thing that we're going to see, I think, going forward is at trade shows. We're going to see all of these things used. Instead of having maybe the biggest booths with huge equipment, we're going to see a lot more of this kind of technology being utilized. And it's using technology to better deliver between the buyers and the sellers and their experience. What are your thoughts on the whole shebang with the realities?
I would put my money on it will happen. I don't see it going nearly as fast as the technology companies are trying to implement it. Oculus is still, what, a $300 to $400 investment, and it's not going to be readily used a lot. So it's still costly. There is definitely a lot of costs to come down and make it more accessible and more adopted. I think I've read some places that it takes about 40% of the households to have it before it really goes into mainstream. And I remember back from my digital marketing and event days that this technology companies thought it was all going to happen by 2025. I think it's going to be much longer than that, unless things are moving along at a different pace. But I think it will happen. I think it is probably going to be commonplace. I can't even begin to say when. AR is definitely already here, and there's a lot more going into it, but the goggles and that full immersive reality, it's a long ways away. So prepare for it. Be on the watch out there. Stay in the know. A lot of small events, little small events like board meetings and small groups, they're using it. And there's some groups here in Los Angeles which are VRLA used to have an entire event built around it, though it was in person. So I would stay abreast, but I wouldn't start allocating resources just yet.
Yeah, and I think the stuff that can be done with our phones, I think we're going to see that technology obviously adapted way faster. Again, when we're talking about walking in our hybrid attendee shoes, about providing value for everybody who's there, it's really 2 different things. It's really 2 different events. You've got your live, and you're trying to capture and make that experience as special as possible, especially with everyone coming back. And then you have people who are more cautious, are choosing not to travel, or maybe you've got a segment of the industry that you're just trying to incorporate in to expand what it is that you're doing and expand, broaden what your show is and what your events are. And so, it brings up the question is, should we be using event design to tease out all year round, community building and be really consistent with it? And then again, is event design the same as building out the customer journey? And is there a difference? What do you think?
It definitely is 2 different. I think it's 2 different things, but they kind of go hand in hand. If you're in the early stages and you're looking at the customer journey, whether it's at in person or the digital event, you're going to have to map out how the program is going to be built. What are the bells and whistles? How are you going to make it as deeply experiential as you can and make it worth their investment? But it doesn't necessarily, it does tie back into the event organizer and how we build out our events, because the customer journey is going to inform the overall event, or I should say events. I still think it's still kind of one and the same, just two different paths. It would be nice if we can bring those two groups as close and as tight together or even together. But that's my take on the customer journey versus building out that event.
I think with event design, you really have to think about, I always start with what is the journey from the moment that they get an email from you or from somebody else, or they see a post on social media. That's when the journey really begins. Through the registration process is a whole other thing, and I think my good friend Matt Coyne has twigged now. He'll be talking about later on this week. We've got to make that journey as easy and fun. There's no reason we can't bring gamification in to get more data. We don't have to ask 500 million questions. I mean, I don't know about all of you guys. Registration, yeah, how many of us go, oh my God, how many pages do I have to go? And you just start ticking off box just to be done with it so you can just be registered. And a lot of the data then is no longer even useful because you just made it so hard on the attendee. We also have to build in fun. We have to build in engagement, both in person and online. So here's a good example, right? You're bringing in a new segment, so you've started some roundtables, you've brought in a couple of thought leaders engaging with people for this new segment that you want to bring in, or maybe a segment that's had a resurgence, or maybe even it's mature, but everything's changed in the last year and a half, right? Everybody's world has changed. Everybody's reality has changed. So it's a great time to be able to bring people together and then actually do a meetup on site with those people that come. And let sponsoring those roundtables sponsor the in-live event, right? Because then what are we doing? We're community building. And that needs to be the purpose and part of the hybrid attendee. Nobody wants to feel like they're left out in the cold by themselves. Even the introverts have gotten a little bit better in terms of the digital experience. And introverts I know are kind of a little afraid to come out, but also excited to see their friends live and in person. So I think that the customer journey and event design go hand in hand. And if we think about who the end user is and keep them first and foremost in our thoughts, it's going to work out better for them. Sometimes go to the old standard ways that we've done it, because we all know putting on a digital event is not easy. It's not easy doing a live event either. There's just a whole different skill set that's necessary. So we want to build in that kind of fun, and we want to make people feel that they're valued, whether they're online or they're in person. I read something from tsnn.com, and there was a gentleman by the name of Toby Lewis from the Live group out of the UK, and he was talking about face-to-face and building things together, and he said you could really have 3 to 4 months of activity, or even longer, if you're working together to create a themed content calendar, right? So a themed content calendar is like in your business, right? You've got all different kinds of flooring at your show and surfaces. So it could be something on what's more sustainable. You could do a whole green track, right, Paul? You could do these different tracks, which you're already doing, to bring them in. And I think that you guys are already do that. Your group particularly is very data savvy and understands data and what to do with it and how to bring in those things. So I think those things can happen in a good way. It does take work. And also, you're going to create FOMO for those unable to be there in person. So what are some other things that you've seen that are really interesting, Paul, in terms of the digital experience going into the live, back into digital, or maybe just completely digital, running currently with live?
Well, going back to your mention of 365, and moving beyond our 3-day, 2-day ephemeral events, which come to life and then they just become a memory. It's an emphasis across almost every organizer, but really ingrained deeply into Inform and happening at TICE's. Through TICE TV, through our sessions with Converge, we have plans of bringing Converge outside of just the actual event and doing sessions, maybe half-day sessions, maybe one or two instructional sessions for our key stakeholders and our audience, and keep that progression going and keep the content flowing. We kind of touched on that, but that's something that we're really trying to produce a lot more, which then flows back. I saw a really interesting new format, which the organizer took the sessions that were being done digital and making those the theoretical, more that one-to-many kind of training. Then when they went live, it became the in-person. It became demonstrative and practical and workshops. So they took all that information that they had been learning and collecting over the course of the year, brought it to show site, and now everything goes hands-on. Whether it's working in QuickBooks or you're trying self-leveling, cement and substrates, latest cash register and point of sale, all those types of things. And I think it's a really clever and a smart way of programming sessions that, again, goes digital, 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 boom, live. You can do all those things that you can't do digitally.
Yeah, and that's another thing that you can do. I mean, I've seen some other groups do it as well, and it's around content and learning. You can also bring in sponsors to that, because again, if we go back to expos, which is our bread and butter, we want to put the buyers and sellers together, right? You can do reverse mentoring. If people have a problem in common that they are tasked with solving, the networking and genuine relationship building begins, because you're not doing the usual back and forth. Oh, I want to sell my product to you, and it's going to help you. No. It's like, let's work together with our separate knowledge sets and see how we can together create a solution and become friends at the same time and get to know people in a completely different way with their knowledge set. Or if somebody's new to the industry, they can posit the questions that maybe we've all heard before, but the answers aren't necessarily what they were 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think? I think these are...
yeah, going a little bit more back towards the vendors and trying to deliver something digital. I think there's an opportunity there to go from the in-person event into the digital side, and it's something that we explored for TICE coming up, and maybe something we'll do for 2022, is instead of using all the bay doors into the floor, we'll use one of the bay doors, and on the back side of it, build out a small little studio, which wouldn't take very much. So we could kind of plexiglass over the front and build a small little recording studio. And it doesn't take a whole lot of money to produce it. Invite the celebrity podcasters in the industry, have them interview the vendors and the software companies, and have them interview the executives or the research team or the marketers, which are bringing the new products to life and everyone's most excited for. And then people can watch that live. We could actually build out a small amount of seating or bleachers so that we open the doors, it goes live, and we shut the doors, kind of like a little screen. And people could watch it live. We're recording it, so then we can push it out digitally, whether that's immediate or if we want to use it over the course of weeks, months, however we want to produce it. That's another thing that we're looking at doing.
That's awesome, because we know some convention centers have built their own proprietary studios during this time. So there are a lot of advantages to that as well as disadvantages, of course, cost being one of them. But I have seen a few shows, not very many, but I have seen a few that have built those studios right on the show floor. And it's great because they're running it also, they're streaming it into the hotel rooms of the attendees that are in the block. So that's another way to bring in the people that are not with those that are. Absolutely. Absolutely. So in terms of, should visitors feel like they went to the same event? That's something that I've really struggled with. Should our in-person folks feel like they were at the same event as our online folks? I don't know. I used to think that they should both feel like they did. But I don't know.
I think it's okay if you don't. I really think it's, if again, going back to that, building out the customer journey and the design that you're producing into the event, I don't think going into, I've been in events that there's an in-person going on while I'm digital, and I don't expect I'm going to come out of there with the same effects. I just want to come out with everything I want to put into it. New contacts, maybe some new friends, learned a few things, discovered something new. I'm good to go. It's fine. I wasn't there to watch some of the over-the-top booth antics, people swinging from chandeliers and the latest rollout. It's okay. Did I feel like I missed out? Probably. Didn't get those receptions in the happy hours. That's cool. But I'm going into this still feeling like it was worth my while. It was worth maybe the money I put into it, and especially the time that I put into it. So I want people to come out knowing that they were at TICE. I want them to feel like I may not have been able to be there, but I got a great opportunity. I don't think you have to have an exact replica of the journey. It's okay.
It is okay. And if you're doing in person, you come online. Bring in some entertainment. I think we've all been really fun events, and they're really not so fun. It depends on your audience. And again, I think it goes back to ask your audience what they think. What is it that they're interested in? What areas? We know that it used to, when people went to trade shows, the number one reason that they went all over the world was to see new. Number two was networking. That switched, and it's become the first thing people want to do is network. Then they want to see new stuff. And I think it's because we've all been in isolation. So other people are digital dead? Absolutely not. I think that those people that are waiting for the demise of digital are barking up the wrong tree. It's a tool. It's another tool for connectivity, and it's another tool for engagement and a way for people to belong. And they don't necessarily have to get on the plane and go somewhere for 3 days unless they're really vested in that particular story. In days of, I think, hopping on a plane and traveling for hours to go to a meeting and then turning around and going back home are over. I think they're over for a lot of corporations. And we've learned that we don't necessarily have to do that. But again, making sure that we create FOMO for both events, I think, is one of the ways that we can really bring our numbers and our depth and program even better.
I'm a little worried that organizers are already slipping back into the in-person only. I already see it, not just within Informa, but with other organizers, being a member of IAEE and talking to lots of others. And it's not on their fault, but resources are tight. There's not as maybe many hands to pull off events, and it takes a little bit more effort and a little bit more bandwidth. And I already kind of see that it's already beginning to slip. I beg everyone, please fight for it, but just do your best.
Absolutely. Well, I think that we're ready for questions. I think I don't know if there are any questions to see the chat. I guess they'll come in and tell us if we have any or not.
Okay.
Or not. All right.
Fine with me.
Here's something I want to go back to live and how you guys have been utilizing that, because I think that's another really good tool.
Can you repeat that one more time, please? You kind of broke up.
Sorry, with the Facebook Live, you've been utilizing all year round. Have you seen members engagement and all those things go up substantially in terms of bringing in more community?
So we've been using Facebook Live with Tice TV specifically. We didn't use it for Tice Live Virtual, our virtual event back in January. So this is really going to be the big test for us, because Tice Live coming up next week is going to have the Converge sessions going on. And I can tell you from Tice TV, yeah, it's nice to be able to go in there and you can see exactly when Stephanie Selesnik gave a heart, when someone mentioned in their production about some new nylon carpet fibers coming in, as an example. So there is a lot of engagement. It gives you the chance to see comments. And if show staff is on the other side of it, which we usually are, we can answer questions as best as we possibly can. So can the vendors that are participating. If you're XYZ company doing a presentation about your new product, they can be in there answering questions at the same time. So it has a huge capacity for interactive.
Excellent. Do we have any? Hello. We joined.
Hello. Yeah,
Famous
thanks very much for
host/moderator.
Thanks very much for having me back in the room, guys, and thanks very much for that discussion. I'm going to go to some of the questions that have come in the last 30 minutes or so while you guys have been talking, and then a couple of points that, if we've got time, I'd like to make. So let's turn to some of these questions. And first of all, I think this was you were talking a lot earlier on at Paul about on-demand content. Having your session on demand, how do you control copyright materials? That's a question that's come in via the Glisser Q&A.
Specifically to the Converge sessions or Tice TV, the things that we're doing with on-demand. Number one, if it's a speaker, we have the copyrights. They've either licensed us to us or we paid for them. So speakers are giving us the distribution rights to that particular session, and some set specific time frames. We always have our 30-day calendar in there. Most of them are perpetuity, and it's kind of in their best interest. For Tice TV, same thing. We have it in our agreements that are on-demand agreements that they are covering us to be able to license this and keep that copyright moving, because it's coming directly from the speakers or the manufacturers themselves.
Sure. No, thanks for that. And I suppose in a similar vein, another question that's come in via Glisser is, how do you manage the data when using social media versus on an event platform?
That's a really good question for the data team. It's something that I fortunately don't have to really delve into. The marketing team, and we have a dedicated Informa Markets team on this type of information. So for me, just on my side, as the person who programs the sessions and the speakers, I use it specifically to find what are the touch points. What has a speaker said that maybe we need to drill down a little bit more, or did someone say something inflammatory and we need to kind of get a little correction there? Maybe there's some wrong information delivered, or maybe someone just went a little rogue and said something that made everyone angry. So I use it for that side, and it's something that you don't get when you're in person usually, or on a lot of platforms. They don't give you the chance to see that engagement. What are people really liking at that particular moment in time that we need to, okay, let's hit that one more. And for the other digital touch points, I will, if you want, we can find out a little bit more about that, but I'll leave that for the team that actually lives and breathes the stuff.
No, absolutely. Another question. I'm just checking the time, guys, but I'm going to squeeze in a couple more if that's okay with you. Maybe in-person and virtual should feel like they both belong in the same community versus the same event. Stephanie, you're nodding straight away. Let's come to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. The whole point is to grow your engagement, right? And your community. I mean, in everybody's database, there are way more people in your database than people that are ever going to come to your live event or even your digital events. You know, you have bloggers. There are bloggers out there that have more readers in your industry than you have in your database. That's reality right now. So yeah, it does behoove you to really plan out what are the customer journeys in your event design. What kind of things do we want them to experience? What highs and lows? Don't be boring. We've had enough of boring Zoom calls, haven't we? And boring webinars. Don't be boring. Whatever you do. And don't be afraid of controversy either. You know, if you've got some disruptors in your industry, you've got some new thinkers, some old ways that are going out the wayside or should, get the people involved to talk about it. And get people engaged, and then give them a place to talk about it after the fireworks have gone off.
Absolutely. If I can put one final question, perhaps to you both, actually, this one, and this is one from me, and it references something, Stephanie, that you said a little bit earlier on in the session, simplifying things, that you like in the way that Paul simplifies things by using Facebook. If the budget doesn't permit a big, expensive live streaming AV company, then why not use the tools that you've got at your disposal? And my question is born out of what we've all experienced in the last 12 months, and that is an understanding that it doesn't have to be 1080p, high bandwidth, ultra high definition quality, as long as the content that's being conveyed is worthwhile. And the point of reference that I've used when I've made this point in the last few months is news content. We see reporters now all over the world who just use an iPhone and a pair of AirPods to deliver a live news broadcast straight back into the studio. And we accept that. As long as we can hear the content, we don't care what the picture quality is. Do you think that there's an understanding now where we can use, you know, more simple equipment that we've all got access to?
I think so. If you look at it, we're a lot more forgiving because we've all tried to be that newscaster or that videographer and failed miserably at it. So I think we're a lot more forgiving in terms of how the content is delivered, as long as it's worthwhile content. If it's new, it's fresh, it gives a perspective that perhaps we hadn't thought about before.